afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, and welcome everyone, including those who are watching the live stream. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Louise Nurser. I'm a planning inspector, and I've been committed by the Secretary of State to examine Chelsea's local plan in relation to its soundness and legal compliance. Before we begin, can everyone hear me? There are no fire alarms planned, so if there is one, it will be for real. So if you could follow the council, who will take us downstairs. There are toilets on its floor, and I hope to break mid-afternoon. And I understand that the council have refreshments, which I believe will be in Committee Room 5. Is that right?
I'm not entirely sure. They were planned to be outside the council chamber today, but I will confirm.
Okay. My examination guidance note sets out how these procedures work, which are fundamentally I needed structured discussion, whose main purpose is for me to get further information relating to the questions I've already asked. Where I've already got enough information, I won't be asking for any more, but if I do need any more, and it may involve further questions, and I will ask them. Please don't feel as if you have to reiterate what you've already said in your papers, because I've read them, so I don't need to hear them more than once. I'll normally ask the council first, and then I'll probably ask others for their contribution. And the way for you to indicate that you wish to contribute is for you to put your nameplate up on your side. When you first speak, it would be very helpful for everyone in the room, including myself, if you could introduce yourselves. That would be very helpful. So thank you very much. We're going to start now on matter 3, which is objectives and spatial strategy. So the first issue is the vision for the borough justified, effective in general conformity with the London plan and national policy and positively prepared. I've got the council's response, and before we move on to more general issues, there are just a few sort of housekeeping issues in terms of the visions. The council sees these visions as policies, and I'm just querying whether they actually should be policies and what's the justification, because in planning law, a policy is a specific, has a special status, in that planning applications have got to be in line with the policy and the material considerations indicate otherwise. So is it appropriate for a vision which, by their very nature, are quite aspirational, for them to actually be policies? So perhaps the council could respond to that.
Yes, the council believes that the vision for the borough is clear and unambiguous. It clearly will be delivered through a raft of other policies which are in the plan. So the vision is supported by other policies, by a raft of other policies. But what the vision does do is bring those policies together and holistically deal with them. And we think, in that case, that actually it does assist in decision making. I think it would be incredibly rare if the council determined a planning application on their vision without any policies. In fact, I think the chances of that scenario happening would be remote. So I think we feel that it does have status of policy because it actually brings all the other policies and objectives within the plan together in one place. and in a clear way.
Does anyone else have an issue? Mr. Cheng?
Afternoon, ma'am. Yes,
Could you introduce yourself?
good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shibo Chen, representing Mr. Donald. I would like to raise a point in regards to paragraph 16D of the framework, in the sense that on objective reading of the vision and individual place visions is not entirely sure that which type of development is RBKC prepared to support or discourage. It merely sets out the vision of the council and what it hopes to achieve, but it does not set out what type of development and what type of place it wishes to create and support.
So you're saying it's ambiguous?
It's ambiguous.
So because the vision is quite overarching.
Ma'am, it's overarching, it's ambiguous, and I do not believe it will assist in decision making in any shape or form.
Does anyone, Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Fountain?
We support having a vision in the plan because it does need to convey a picture of where we're going. In particular, the emphasis on green, which is really quite new and is one of the key parts of the council's overall objectives for itself. Both inclusive and livable are, again, three major themes for the council. One of the things that I feel strongly about is, and we've made representations about, is that the place is like London is a city of villages. We are a city of neighbourhoods. And making that the building is part of what I'm trying to put across.
Okay, understand that, but
And that's in other chapters.
yes. So the question, but my question maybe is it should it have the status of because the policy
Yes.
is different from an overarching objective or a vision of how
Yes.
the borough should be.
That it could be dispensed with if you didn't think it had relevance to policies, but it is actually a guiding principle for those policies. And if you were to look back and say, well, how is that put into practice? And you go on policies. It should be seen as policy. That is the direction they want to go in. So the answer is yes.
Good afternoon, Mark McLeod, local president. I like to second in a way what Mr. Bark has.
You don't need to second.
Oh, sorry.
Can I just be absolutely clear? We won't get anywhere if
Right.
anybody seconds and.
Well, actually, I do
Or
have some more. I do have some more to add, if I
Or
may.
if even anyone agrees, because we
Right.
could be here a long time.
But may I add something else
Yes.
to that? Thank you, sir. That those vision objectives, which I initially read as policy, I think should be stated are the reason I'm sitting here and have been engaging with this entire process. And I would like to think that these three objectives, green, inclusive and livable, do have legal heft and weight. Whether they can be dispensed with as an option under certain circumstances, it will not be for me to judge. But in terms of their inspirational quality, I think they're a very useful entry point in a borough where policy making and policy drafting is a very arcane subject. It was those three words are what drew me in to this entire process, otherwise I would not have engaged. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Howard. I understand what you're saying in terms of the vision being something that's aspirational and inspirational. It's a question of whether its legal status should be that of policy. And that's a sort of a more, as you say, a slightly arcane point, but it's one that's important. I don't think I want to go any further at this point, unless it's because it's just very specific question, really, that one. In terms of the actual, what the actual vision says, the council obviously clearly considers it to be a good vision. Does anyone have any reason, have any comments to say why it shouldn't be as is?
Susanna Trollsdorf. I'm Susanna Trollsdorf. I'm a trustee of the Onslow Neighborhood Association. I'm focused on South Kensington, but I have a question here. Is it to the overall definition of vision, or is it, do you question also to specific visions?
I'm just talking about the specific overall vision at the moment. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on then to the issue of vision and individual place visions. Oh, sorry, actually, I'm going to move on to 25. Is the plan period explicit, justified by the relevant evidence? This is a question that I asked yesterday, actually, but it's one of the ones that sort of comes up in different contexts. So does anyone have any issue related to the plan period itself? No, okay. Okay, can we talk about the individual place visions? I understand that there are obviously some concerns relating to the individual visions themselves, so I might just go through them. Jenny, you're confused.
Yes, because I haven't been to one of these before. I wasn't sure whether I should have commented on question 24, but you moved on.
Well, if you want to comment, please do not hesitate.
I mean, I've written, so do I say, could I draw your attention to it and add to it?
You- Is it relating to the individual place vision? Individual ones like PLV one, you know, the places rather than the overarching vision.
I think yes.
To-
It's relating to individual.
Okay, well then we'll go through
And the general vision, because of the sort of philosophy of the borough.
Okay, right. Okay, talk about the overall vision then.
So I would like my main vision, to be considered. But I think my main concern is a principle underlying a lot of the vision, which is that I'm not sure that I'm not convinced that it's serving the broader community and the diversity, or whether it's realising the very valuable potential of a lot of the land and sites in the borough.
How would you think it should be improved then?
Well, I think it's for the council to serve the community, not just developers. And I have a very strong feeling with, as the changes occur to where I live, that bit by bit local people and the broader concerns of residents are not regarded. So I don't know whether that is too soft to raise here, but it is my feeling about the vision, that the vision is very ambitious, and I'm not sure it favours everybody. And sorry if it was inappropriate.
No, not. No, I mean, don't worry. Obviously, this is not everybody does this every day. But in terms of the specifics of the policy, the council would probably point you to the the middle issue relating to inclusive, which we talked about narrowing inequality, livable, etc. So I'm just trying to drill down to what you would
Well, maybe
suggest would be appropriate.
Well, I don't know whether you're talking right across the borough. I'm thinking near me of two specific sites, which would be Kensal side and Portobello Road. So because I don't know, you'll have to help me because I don't quite know how this.
I'll be going through the individual visions
Okay.
and we'll be looking at those. And then obviously Kensal Rise and the Portobello Road visions are the specific visions for those small place, the place, their individual places, so they're place visions for those. And if you wish to comment on those, that would be the opportunity then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think it'd be easiest if I just go through the various individual visions. We're going a little bit off piece the questions, but I think it's the simplest way to do it. And then I'll come back and talk about strategic policies, individual strategic policies, which are policy 30 and 31. And if the council wants to weave in its answers to question 29, and do so, and then we can discuss also the issue of the planning, the plan strategy. Okay. Can we start with PRV1, which is Kensal Canal Site Opportunity Area? This is a does anyone have any issues relating to that? Spark?
Yes, I'm not sure whether the words have been struck out yet. So we talked about it being well connected in both A and B, and it is demonstrably not well connected because it has very poor public transport ability. And apart from a few extra buses, there is no major change to the geography in that area likely to happen in the next 20 years because there's not going to be a station there. And ideally, suddenly it will go from retail 3 at retail 1 at the other end. It's not going to change. So I would like to strike out the word well connected.
Okay.
Even if that is the ambition, which I can't agree with.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is just going to ask for people's views, just go around the table, and if anyone has any issues with the vision, I will go through those. I'll then ask the council to respond, and then I'll take that away, bearing in mind, A, my concerns as to whether it should be a vision or a policy, and I can take into account what people have said. Does that make? Okay, so that's the easiest way of doing it. So, Janine, you've got your, Tony's got your, you look as if you're about to say something.
Sorry. I was generally speaking wanting to contribute to the council.
Well, so my question is,
Yeah.
about the previous set, have you got any comments on the vision?
Yes, I have comments, concerns about the height of the buildings, the proximity of them to each other.
Okay, I'm not actually talking about the specific site at the moment. I'm not, the problem is I suppose it's difficult to understand that they could be tackling this in different in sort of segments. So at the moment, I'm attacking it on the basis, or addressing it on the basis of whether the vision is appropriate. So the vision is PLD1, which sets out how it's going to be transformed. So the question is that vision appropriate?
Can you speak to someone else first, because I need to have a quick look.
Does anybody else wish to raise anything on the council vision? Okay, Mr. King.
I'm concerned as to whether there has been any mentions in the place vision as to the retention of community asset that has been viewed as valuable to other communities in Kensington Canal side. During the regulating consultation, I noticed several local community action groups and individual residents have commented on the importance of Canal Side House and as the important role Canal Side House has to the community life. And crucially, and some of the responses also mentioned, I believe, on the Canal Side House as a venue for rehabilitation from trauma by the residents.
Yes, I understand that. Okay, so in terms of, I'm very sorry, but we've only got this afternoon to get through all of the visions. But in terms of, can I take it you're saying that the vision requires to signal the issue relating to community facilities, retention of community facilities?
Yes, I would put it forward that the vision should include.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody want to say anything about council canal side vision? If you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Isis Amlak. I'm here as a resident, but I'm also stepping in to represent the Kensington and Chelsea Citizens Advice. This is for my own submission as a resident. I just wanted to raise the concern, I don't know if it's already been raised, that the vision to me fails because there's no reference to resident participation, co-design, co-production and the process, and also the impact on the infrastructure, community infrastructure, has not been taken into consideration. How are people actually going to live, where the schools and the local community provisions. It talks a lot about commercial stuff, but not enough on the community side.
Thank you. If you can remember to put your speaker down. Thank you very much.
I might have, though I didn't get a chance, I just rushed in to throw something in on behalf of the Citizens Advice, but I don't know if you're going around the room, I might just come back very quickly. I'm just checking if there was something that needed to be raised.
If you could, I was going to go to the council now.
Okay, but if something comes up, I'll just quickly, if I could just get a minute to just.
Not on council.
Not on
I'm
council,
going
I'm
to
gonna
try to
go
get
past. Okay.
on other issues, but if you briefly just quickly look, because obviously.
Oh, well, I don't want to hold you up, just.
Okay.
Yeah. Carry on.
Councillor, do you want to come back on those points, please?
Yes, so in terms of Mr. Bart's point about deleting the vision for a well-connected site, clearly Mr. Bart's referring perhaps to the existing situation. This is a vision that clearly is dealing with the future, and the council, as part of bringing this site forward, will have to deliver critical infrastructure on this site, which we're more than aware of and we've laid out. So it is the council's intention, as part of the development of this site, that it will be well connected. I'm sure there may be debate about how well connected it might be, but it will be connected. So I think that deals with that point. The point about the community, clearly we are dealing with the site itself, which is vacant at the moment. We do make the point very clearly that we want to see a thriving, well-connected, mixed and inclusive community. And as part of the site allocation, we've also, and I think it was specifically with regard to Canal Side House and the concerns of the occupiers of Canal Side House, and we made these points yesterday as well, happy to go back to them. We made it quite clear that there will be a relocation of those facilities as part of any decat of any occupiers of Canal Side House. So they won't be lost. and it is the intention of the council that they would be re-provided on time. Furthermore, we also have a policy, SI1, which is a very robust policy that deals with a lot of community facilities.
Mr. White, I understand you're trying to demonstrate that its policy is correct, but I'm just really trying to concentrate on the vision.
On the vision, right.
So if the wording of the vision might need something to demonstrate to clarify and give any form of comfort that the community facilities, that would be retained, or a part of your vision that it would include that, that's what I'm asking you, whether that's required or that could be included.
We could include it. I don't think it's necessarily required, because I think as a well-connected, privately inclusive community, we would say that actually it would be expected that appropriate community facilities provided, but if it would help, I think we can probably add, I haven't thought through this, but I'm sure we can add with provision of appropriate community facilities or something along those lines as part of the new community.
That's the vision. Also, just also for the benefit of people who weren't here yesterday, just clarify that there was a discussion relating to the use of supplementary planning documents as a policy. Now, if it is, it will get slightly confusing, but at the moment, the vision relates to the SPD, and the SPD doesn't have policy status. It can, the local plan policy. So that might be something that the council would consider taking out. Thank you. Sorry, have you now just
I'm so sorry about this, yes.
But I mean, I know it's kind of like we'll take this one as like the sort of the first go, and then if you
Okay.
can understand the way the system works.
One issue, my problem is the use of high density. It's part of my problem with the vision for this site, which is I think it's over ambitious and it's creating thousands of dwellings, but I would suggest not much of a way of life for people. Secondly, I cannot imagine how something of this scale could be built whilst respecting the local residents for the next 10 years, bearing in mind the current situation of the arterial roads that are surrounding that site.
No, don't apologise. It's just important because otherwise, as I say, it won't be a structured discussion at all. So it will be people putting their here, there, and everywhere. It has to be because we've got 9 to get through. Mr. Clyde, you've already talked about the vision, haven't you? You've had the opportunity.
Not about PLB one.
Well, I did go through, but
I'm
just
so sorry.
I
I misunderstood.
no, just this once.
Yes, thank you. I just want to take the opportunity to propose the main modification relating to the text here, which says takes cues from the borough's urban form and existing typologies. I would like to suggest that form can also be taken from typologies that do not yet exist in the borough, seeing as this is a long-term project. And whilst I have the floor, I'd also like to raise the aspiration of what connectivity could be in future decades to come, and that may include decking over the railway in addition to the currently proposed bridges.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've heard what everyone has to say, but you've got your Toblerone up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I don't want to miss you out. Can we then move on to, it's for me, I think I'll go away and I've got various things to think about, and obviously until I've heard the rest of the sessions relating to these sites, to some extent it's very difficult to form a view on the vision until I've gone through the rest of the process. So, can we now move on to the Earls Court opportunity area? Does anyone have any issues relating to how the council has set out that vision?
I think it applies to all of this. Do any of these things apply in terms of assessing a proposal? I think the question you were asking. If they write on an application, in other words, the application doesn't meet these policies, isn't that the test as to whether it's a policy? In other words, if the ambitions here are ways in which you assess screening comes forward, then it's a policy. Otherwise, it's just guidance. So I would suggest that some of these things are quite clearly trying to say, this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is what we'll assess it against.
So, I don't have any further comments on Earls Court opportunity area. Can people put, sorry to be a bit short here, but can people put their Toblerones up straight away, and then I'll know
I see.
that I
All
can
together,
then
at the
move
beginning,
on.
at the beginning of
because-
the question.
Yes,
Right.
because otherwise I will be thinking no one else wants to say anything. I'll then move on, then I'm like, Toblerone.
Pardon me again.
No, Mr.
Misunderstood.
Mr.
Again, I would like to propose a main modification regarding the aspirations for Earls Court, and this is reiterating suggestions made over Max 1, Regulation 19 and 18, and it's to do with the mention of not only anticipating a range of commercial and employment users, but also local food growing, also known as urban agriculture within those locations.
Does the council want to come back on that one?
Well, I think what I would say is that the vision for the Earls Court opportunity area has been subject to a lot of engagement and consultation with regard to those visions, and they've been brought into by the community. And I don't want for a minute to diminish the role of urban agriculture as part of something that's is good to achieve, but I would be concerned if that was specifically mentioned in the Earls Court vision. It's not something that's really we concentrated on, and clearly in terms of strategic matters, I think we set those ones out. I think this is more the mind matter that could be addressed by the wider vision in any case.
Thank you. Can I now move on to PRV 3, which is Lancaster West, State and Nottingdale. Does anyone have any issue with that vision? Okay, Mr. Neal?
concern was just the wording of the priority of being ecological and carbon neutral in an area that there is a lot of contention surrounding the physical buildings. I wondered if that's a disguised way of suggesting demolition, which they've been fighting off for some years. So I just wasn't sure about the priority. Everything to do with Lancaster West seems to be about environmental issues, not social.
Now, I'd like to raise 2 points. I'll be brief. First of all, this vision was prepared without policy formulation report. So it raises the question as to whether it has been justifiably prepared in the sense that it is almost impossible to see how the council has taken account of all the proportionate evidence in formulating this vision. Second of all is that again, ma'am, it might relate to a previous point you have raised already, but this all sounds like an action plan from the council in regards to Lancaster West Estate rather than a planning policy. So again, I will refer to paragraph 16D of the framework. If a decision maker is making a decision of a different proposal in the area, it's ambiguous as to how he should react in regards to this policy. Because again, it all sounds like an action plan from a Lancaster West Estate rather than an area as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Isis Amlak, resident, speaking for myself. There's just one thing in the Lancaster Nottingdale PLV3A, that first paragraph. Who are they co-designing the vision with? There's no mention of residents in the community, just as co-design. Clearly, would be good to be specific, and I would ask that there's that we actually have I don't know what's the word, not procedural change, but an amendment basically to it. I can't remember the exact term, but procedural amendment, whatever, whereby we include who the co-design is happening with, the community is specifically mentioned.
Council. Would the council like to come back to any of those points? But before they do that, there is an issue that I wanted to raise in terms of the status of these little maps that relate to these visions and how they relate to the actual proposal, the policies map. Are these just indicative, or I mean, what status do they have?
They are indicative. There's some of these, they are informative. Some of the constraints shown on the map are statutory ones. So, for example, where not for this particular one, not for CLB, but in other places we've shown, for example, this building or operational areas. So some are statutory, but otherwise they are more, or for example, in this map we have shown the employment zone boundary, which is also shown on the proposed map. But other significant buildings are just shown for as an indicative. And just to be helpful, so it links in with the
So would it be, on the basis of making the plan more effective, would it be better to label these clearly as illustrative or for context, or just so that someone coming along is clear what the actual status is? So could you take that as an action point to think of an appropriate term? And could you then respond to the issues that you raised?
Yeah. So I think the vision is focused on environmental improvements. That's correct, and so it really is drafted in the sense to provide something that's deliverable. And there is ongoing work with regards to the Nottingdale Heat Network. Is being co-designed with the community, and that's what the vision reflects. So it's that aspiration for that neighbourhood to become an eco-neighbourhood and provide a model for the rest of the borough. So in terms of the modification suggested that the vision is being co-designed, so I think we would accept that we can add the word with the community to part A, and we are V3 part A. That should definitely be some modification that we would recommend.
I'll recommend it. Tom's going to recommend it. It's something that can be taken forward, yeah. Mr. Dean had raised concerns relating to whether it was the whole use of referencing carbon neutral was trying to say demolition in a different way.
So I think elsewhere in the plan, we've made it very clear that the council continues to stand by its commitment that we are not looking at estate regeneration in the borough, and that's a commitment that was made, and we stand by that. So that there is no kind of hidden intention here. There is ongoing work, as I said, with regards to the Nottingdale Heat Network. And there have been a number of consultations in the area in developing how that might be delivered. So that is the true intention. There's a lot of commitment, a lot of funding that's been put into place to enable that to happen.
Thank you very much. Can we move now on to PLB 4, which is the Westway vision? Does anyone have any comments that they'd like to reiterate relating to the Westway vision?
It might be helpful to start to mention from here now that there's no policy formulation reports to all the rest of the policy vision apart from PLB 1 and 2. I think that presents a question as to how the justified criteria of soundness is observed by the council for all the other place visions. And also all the other place visions start again from here forward. It's unclear how decision makers should react to them.
Yeah, I mean, you've made that point, and
Thank you.
I've made that point as well, so it's something for me to take away.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Malley?
Yes, in the vision, one of the things that I suggested in my submission, and I would like to see included in the application, is that there's no reference to the historical narrative. You talk about the history and culture and local context, but one of the most important things for us to take into consideration when talking about the land under the Westway is that 23 acres of land is supposed to be held in trust for the community. It's a community asset and a community resource. And that's one of the problems that the community had and have been fighting against the Westway Trust since 2014 with the, what were they called, Westway 23 campaign and various other campaigns also looking at the air quality. But what has happened since then and the change of management is that we now have a community running the Westway Trust, and that point is being made very clearly, and I would like to see, I know the community would like to see reference to the ownership of that 23 acres. Because it just, as it stands, it just seems that it's land, but it's really important. We don't have any land trust really in this borough, and that's something that we ought to have and we ought to think about. How does the community control land? And this is a historic narrative that really should be included.
Okay, I'd quite like to have clarification from the council on that, because in the supporting text in 925, it says that the land is actually owned by Transport for London. So is that correct?
What happened is when they...
Sorry, can I just ask the
Oh,
council?
sorry.
As far as I understand it, I'm not an expert, I'm afraid, on it, but as far as we understand, but we can clarify this, that actually the land is owned by Transport for London because it's beneath the arterial road, and it's actually sort of then leased to the Westway Trust, and there's some leases that are either to the Westway Trust or the council, depending on the portion of land concerned. I think it is quite complex, but I think in terms of land ownership, it is transport for London because it is beneath the Westway.
Okay. If that's something that
Sorry, can I just quickly come back?
I was
Just on
gonna,
one point.
yeah, what I was gonna actually
Okay.
suggest was that, if it does need some finessing, that it might be helpful if outside of the hearing, you could both, you could both have a conversation about it and see if you can, put together.
That would be
some-
helpful.
I'm not suggesting that I would necessarily take it on that wording, but I think it would be useful if there's.
I think there needs to be some recognition of the communities, or if you want to call it stewardship, ownership, whatever.
I mean, if it's just a question of finessing the words, I'm sure Mr. Wade would have no, objection to doing that outside the hearing session.
I just think just to do some note taking, it'd be helpful for me to know if ISIS is speaking when you're a private individual and when you're the social council. Just my note.
Yeah, sorry, what I ought to have done is had two of these Toblerones, one for myself and one for the social council. I mean, for the citizens' advice, sorry.
So it's
Citizens' advice, yeah.
but in terms of that, are we discussing with you or the citizens' advice?
Well, that's me, but much of what I'm saying overlaps, but I did say, I think I said when I started this, it was me.
Lovely, thank you.
So that's paragraph 925. Thank you. I'm now going to look at the council employment zone vision. PLV 5. Anyone has any questions relating to that? It's one of those visions where, as we discussed today, it talks about in line with some workspace strategy, which, unless you know what the workspace strategy is, it's quite difficult to see how you'd actually deliver that. So perhaps the council could consider what the workspace strategy is actually trying to achieve. No objection, hold on. Yes,
So, paragraph 9.39 tries to set out what may be in the workspace. Really,
but I think it's just something out in the, if it's going to be a policy, remember we talked about how those kind of issues need to be taken out of the policies. So, I mean, if it was a vision, and if it was just a aspiration, then it would be so significant, but if it's going to be a policy, it would need to be.
could I also ask, so in the main modifications that have been put to you, so the deletion of yes, so it's 9.37 to be deleted, so are we?
I will, on the basis that I've ignored that, that is something that I may come back with as a main modification. I mean, it's a factual issue, isn't it? Thank you. I mean, now look at the Freeston Latimer Road Employment Zone vision, which I understand has some duplication with the Latimer Road allocation, and whether there's any tension between those two. Before I ask council to respond to that, has anybody any issue on PLB 6 they'd like to raise? The council come back on that issue relating to any potential tension between the employment zone vision and the Latimer Road allocations.
I don't see that there's any tension between the two. I mean, perhaps at a later hearing we discuss the policy regarding employment zones. But clearly we've made it clear our approach to employment zones. The employment zone policy, and the view of the council is that this vision fits in with that. We talk about a mixed use quarter. Latimer Road is also covered, as Mr Peterson knows, by the St Quintin Woodlands Neighbourhood Plan, which is also promoting mixed use on Latimer Road. I think it's the council's view that our policy, vision and the neighbourhood plan all speak as one.
Okay, before the gentleman from the Neighbourhood Forum comes forward, I think in the interest of transparency, the council should be making explicit that neighbourhood plans, once this plan is adopted, if a neighbourhood plan is not consistent with policies of the plan, then obviously that neighbourhood plan, those policies are superseded. Because that's what you reference in neighbourhood plans, and I think it'd be very helpful if you could set somewhere in the actual plan how those policies in the neighbourhood plans will be affected by the adoption of the plan. Because clearly there is the planning, the way the planning works is that every time you adopt the plan, the most recent plan supersedes the one that was previous. So I think that's important to make it explicit. You, sir?
Yes, I'm Henry Peterson, Chair of the St Quintin Woodlands Neighbourhood Forum. I did not detect any tension in the sense that the local plan elsewhere makes clear that it supports all the policies in the 2018 adopted or made neighbourhood plan, so that those continue in force. And I have not picked up any tension between this vision and what is said in the neighbourhood plan. I mean, we have spent quite a lot of time in dialogue with the council about the precise wording of policies in relation to Latimer Road, and agreed way forward was reached, which does reflect the particular viability position of that part of the Preston Latimer employment zone. So time has been spent on that, and I think all is consistent and all square as far as we're concerned from the forum's perspective.
Thank you very much, Mr Peterson. Right.
I understand that speaking as a resident. So I'd just like to see something, or wonder whether it's possible to have something included in the vision that refers, so you talk about mixed use, but there's no specific reference to like social rents or social entrepreneurship. And obviously there must be an implication that mixed includes that, but would it not be more helpful to be more specific? Because again, representation of community opportunities.
My understanding when they're talking about mixed use, they're talking about employment/residential. The extent to who runs the employment is not, it's tenure blind, so to speak. You know, it's a mixed use site with some D1 activity there. I'm going to, when I come to look at the actual policy, I'm going to be discussing the extent to which it's realistic to have the employment and the residential there in terms of the value. Because when I went out on site, it's clear that some of the employment there looks to be quite low value. And to what extent that needs protecting. But that's an issue for another day. It's questions and actual vision today's what we're discussing. Thank you. Can we now move on to PLV 7?
So can I just get one point of clarification on what you said? On 9.47, they're talking about the vibrant mix of activities. So that doesn't include anything to do with entrepreneurship, social activities, that's simply commercial stuff. That's small businesses, I don't know, 9.47.
Small business and light industrial, I think they're.
That's why I was wondering why there was no reference to anything that was social, so that's why.
Well, the policy, we'll talk about the policy, when we do the policies tomorrow. In terms, it may be that an amendment might be appropriate, having looked at the policy tomorrow. But I would just leave it there for the moment today. Locks Road, employment, zone vision. Again, my question would be, is there any tension between that and the proposed allocation? Oh, all right, you're very prying.
And
Sorry.
reason for the next one.
I'm on Locks Road, which I thought was the one that you're interested in.
I am, it's not here.
Oh, right, okay. In terms of councils, they can come back to me and to whether there's any tension between the two.
I don't think there is tension between the two. We've made it clear in our policy about our approach to employment zones moving forward. And I think this vision reflects that.
Obviously, I'll be discussing it tomorrow in terms of, and if there are any consequential amendments, that would be, obviously the vision may have to be amended. Okay, thank you. PLV 8, which is Kensington High Street.
If this is policy, it would worry me. Because it says
Sorry, can you just introduce yourself on the basis of the people who are live to be watching it live stream?
Michael Kensington. If this were a policy, I'd be worried because it actually says evening will be supported. And then if you go to the 9.56, the justification study for it, it's been identified in the London plan as having a nighttime economy regional and sub-regional significance. And then there's this again when it comes to South Kensington. What's in the London plan is a description, it is not a policy. In other words, when you look at the list of town centres, it classifies which type of evening economy there is in the centre. That in itself is not a prescription for growth, it is merely a recognition of what is there. The question here is whether this is actually going to be proposing an increase in the evening economy, and if it is that, I don't think it should be in a policy.
Very much, Mr. Spark. So the question is for the council, is the idea that the evening economy should be grown?
It's the only centre in which this has been highlighted.
The designation for nighttime economy classification is clearly set out in London plan. And it's set out in two ways. I'll come on to South Kensington later, but I'll deal with NT2, which includes areas of regional or sub-regional significance. And in this paragraph, that includes Kings Road East, Kensington High Street and the Knightsbridge. And that's where the nighttime economy classification is provided. Just pointing out what the policy itself is. It's policy HC6 in London Plan. Just for reference, that's page 129. And it's included in chapter 7, Heritage and Culture. And that lays out a number of things that Borough should be doing in supporting the nighttime economy. And B talks about development plans. It's one of those assets. It talks about promoting the nighttime economy. It goes on to talk about improving access, inclusion and safety. It talks about diversifying the range of nighttime activities, including extending opening hours. It also talks about, in terms of amenity, addressing the cumulative impacts for high concentrations of licensed premises on antisocial behaviour, noise pollution, health and well-being, and seeking ways to diversify and manage these areas. Then talk about safe and convenient nighttime transport, and protecting and supporting evening and nighttime cultural venues. So it's clear, Kensington High Street, there is an expectation that the nighttime economy should be supported, and that's something that council also supports.
So in that respect, you talked about the London Plan setting out some caveats or some means of ensuring that the nighttime economy can operate without causing, ways of mitigating
Yes.
the nighttime evening economy. Does this do anything in that area?
Well, I think that's a process that the council needs to come to rather than necessarily having to be put into a vision. The fact is that we do have things like street wardens and others that will make sure that we've got a licensing system to make sure that obviously premises are well run and those licenses are regularly reviewed. I wouldn't see it necessary to put into a town centre vision. And this is the town centre vision. It's not for residential area. Necessarily, we would need to make clear, make some reflection about residential amenity. We do have policies, other policies within the plan that control residential amenity. My concern would be that if we did do that, then perhaps proposals that come forward would always be held up and say, well, actually, the vision it says that you will protect residential amenity, and we will do that as part of any proposals coming forward. We would need to assess that. I don't think that necessarily needs to go into the vision. And actually, if you look at the wording in the London Plan policy of what's required, as part of the development plan, it talks about seeking ways to ensure that these areas are protected and safe, but it doesn't sort of say that you need to have an actual policy to say that.
I say what my concern was, and that is that this could be used when an application comes forward as a ground for supporting an application. And
I understand
that's my worry.
I understand that's your concern. I suppose playing devil's advocate, is what you're concerned about, talking about the saying residential amenity would already be covered by various policies, but then you have the last sentence which talks about improvements to the streetscape will integrate the area's functions and make it a better place for people to spend time. I mean, is that particularly
But I think that's
visionary?
Yeah, well, I personally think it is. I think it is visionary that we do want people to use our town centres to spend time there. It was one of the things that, as part of you know, the message from the pandemic was that town centres are evolving and will be used in other ways. And it was a place where people came to interact with each other. It wasn't necessarily a place where people always came to shop, because the nature of shopping, as we all know, has changed. So I think it's important that our town centres are places where people can come and interact with each other. I'll just come back to the London Plan Policy, because it's good on it. It says in development plans, town centre strategies and planning decisions. So we have to take into account not just the fact that it's in the development plan, but we need to take into account in any planning application that this is designated as a nighttime economy. And clearly, if that designation wasn't appropriate, then that's something for the London Plan examination. It's not, I don't think with respect to it's for this examination.
Thank you. Can I now move on to the Portobello Road vision? Perhaps I know the council wanted to table some amendments to that already. Perhaps you could just briefly set out what those were.
So, I think the first thing, so, Peter Gulati, Kensington and Chelsea Council. One of the modifications that we've suggested is that the vision statement is amended to include reference to Goldbrook Market. And this was in response to the consultation comment received by Kensington Society. And then corresponding to that, the map outline is also extended, so it shows Goldbrook Market. And then there are some suggested changes to the text of the vision. So, you want me to read?
If you could just ensure that, I'm sure people should have read your statement, but whether they have or not, perhaps in point.
So PLB 9 should then read the Portobello and Roadham Road Market will continue to be a vibrant and distinctive street market serving the day-to-day needs of local residents and attracting visitors from across the world. The area will maintain a rich variety of, and then there's some new text added saying commercial business and services users, as well as small independent shops offering something different, including art and antiques and collectibles. And then there's new sentence added to say, this includes renowned antiques arcades and the vintage and flea markets of Portobello Road and Goulburn Road. Improvements to market infrastructure will be supported, as will public realm improvements that are delivered in a cohesive and holistic approach with the community. These were in response to comments received from the Pembridge Association, Kensington and Chelsea Social Council, from yourself, Mr. Neal, and also from Turley on behalf of Warrior Group, Property Group, and Portobello Group. And then there are some changes suggested to paragraph 9.5, which again make corresponding changes to the ones that I've read to add Goulburn Market and reference to improvements to junction and crossing on Nottingham Gate.
Thank you very much for that. Before you come in, Mr. Lee, just wanted to, I suppose this vision somehow encapsulates my slight concerns in relation to whether policy or not. So if somebody wanted to come along and sell potatoes, okay, this is rather a random analogy. Are you going to stop them selling potatoes when they should be selling antiques? I mean, how are you going to do that?
Well, I think some of it comes down to the kind of control we've got. Clearly, if someone's selling potatoes rather than antiques, they wouldn't be planning control. I think we understand that. I think if someone needed to put in a planning application because there was control, then clearly they could this division, we feel is clear and unambiguous and could be used to show the direction of travel and determining a planning application. But again, I think I'll come back to the raft of other policies that would apply if planning permission is required. I think the challenge that any council has, and we have it, is that clearly we still firmly believe in place shaping, even sometimes when we don't necessarily have the direct tools to do that. And this is a way, and this council feels quite strongly about this, this is a way that we can place shape, where we don't necessarily always have control, but it does help to provide a clear direction of travel which is transparent, and I think that actually assists development coming forward, and it's an effective way of using the plan. That was the way I would approach it. I think it would be unfortunate if we wrote a plan where we were going into enormous detail in every aspect about whether permission is required for something or not. We do know, obviously, that change planning is a constantly evolving subject, and what we might have control for today, we may not have control for next week. And what we might not have control for next week, we might get control for. So it's that kind of environment which you have to live. But again, I really come down to the place shaping aspect of this plan, which I think we think is really important.
So whilst you might not have those controls, you think the value is to set out the aspiration?
Yes, I do. I think that this is a part of our plan that we feel is really important because it provides the spatial element for this borough, and we think that's important.
Okay, thank you very much. Lynn, you wanted to come in?
Am I allowed to ask what this place shaping means?
To be honest, I prefer you didn't ask
Okay,
questions.
sorry.
I'll ask the question of the council if you want. What does place shaping mean?
It's really trying to really come from an integrated response to a number of different strands of work where you bring them together with a vision to drive outcomes forward. I know that sounds a bit gobbledygook, but what I'm trying to say is it's providing a very holistic approach to issues. It's not looking them in isolation, so they are brought together and actually delivered. We're not place making because that would be wrong, because we have the places already. What we're trying to do is make them better in conjunction and co-design, obviously, with the communities. That makes any sense.
Well, it does, but I would like my main modification to be considered.
I thought, forgive me, I thought your main modification had been considered and was.
But I'd like to add to it that I think that it's the crucial thing about Portobello is livability. That's what we need to do, because what is happening is that there is a very imbalanced number of food outlets, restaurants, chains, and it is fast becoming a tourist eating area. And a lot of the road space is taken up with that. Stallholders find it very difficult to run stalls because of the rents found for storage areas. Bit by bit, I would argue that the council are possibly not protecting the interests of the more local, more individual people, but individual property developers are being allowed to develop entire malls and stores. So I would question whether what you've said, which is a bit cheeky of me, but question whether it's actually reflecting what's going on.
Can I just say, Mr. Dinny, that whilst the council, I'm sure it would be able to control the whole property market, unfortunately, we're working in the system where it's, as I was saying, in terms of my potato analogy, the council is quite limited in what it actually can do. I'm not acting as an advocate for the council here, but I think it's very important to be clear that the council is limited to the planning in terms of coming forward with what can actually be allowed in particular shops. That is something that can't control what actually goes in a shop.
But then they're not going to protect the diversity of the area.
Well, that's they can try their best, but in terms of if you had 20 people coming along wanting to sell a particular thing, if it's in the same use class order,
Yeah.
the council would find it very difficult to change. Sorry, you wanted to?
Yeah, 2 points. So the first one, sort of picking up on actually what Molly said, and around, so in my submission, one of the points I made was my concern about the increasing number of chain stores. And I think it's a problem, because I agree entirely with what point Molly's making about changing the essential shape of the area. And also because the council made a commitment to the local authority some years ago that they would not have chain stores on Portobello Road, or they manage them. Now you say that there isn't anything that can be done. However, when I was looking into all of this last year and preparing this, there was something called Formula Retail, which I came across, which is something they use in America and other parts of the world, which is about controlling exactly that number of chain stores in local areas. If an area is known for,
But unfortunately, the planning legislation that we work with in England doesn't.
so there's no way to protect.
No.
Okay, so that was my first point. So that's a concern. How do we protect those independent?
Unless the council owns the building, in
Yeah.
terms of,
They're doing Golden Road.
but that's a separate issue. If the council has control, it's up to the council how, I mean, I have no idea how the council's, how it deals with its properties. But in terms of planning, you can't differentiate between various owners.
Well, I suppose in terms of this whole place shaping and all of these sorts of things and livability and all the vision, it doesn't really hold with the vision of what we expect from Portobello Road. What I've seen, how I've seen Portobello Road change is not the direction we want to go.
Okay, I mean, that's.
And then the other point was in 9.5, it was just about the use of the language. So you've got a list of the different communities and you've had Afro-Caribbean. So the term,
Which paragraph?
9.5. 9.59, sorry, I can't keep the jumping. Sorry, so if you go down to the third sentence, I think it is, and you'll see the significant Afro-Caribbean, etc. Now you put Afro-Caribbean and West Indian, so I would suggest remove West Indian as an inaccurate term anyway, and Afro-Caribbean captures the same ethnic group. However, it should really be African Caribbean, the hyphen in between, because Afro is actually a hairstyle, kind of, all lines up a bit, it's an Afro. So African Caribbean, there's no point for West Indian because you're just leaving this.
Well, that's an action point the council can take forward. I'm not sure that we could much more point of doing the Portobello Road anymore, unfortunately, in terms of aspirations and running against the hard reality of planning. Sometimes the two don't necessarily meet as one would hope.
Can I just ask one ignorant question? What is the point of a vision if you're saying the council actually can't do anything if individuals own buildings? I own a building, but I have to apply for planning permission to do the smallest thing. I just don't understand why the vision can't voice that it's going to protect.
Because there are certain things that the council can control,
Okay.
but there's certain things that the council can't control. And that was my question in relation to antique shops. Because antique shops fall in exactly this. If you had an antique shop, it's just an A1 shop. You could sell potatoes from that antique shop, you could sell, you could start Primark from that antique shop. There's nothing in planning terms that could. Okay, could the council just confirm that I'm right, but I'm sure.
No, we're aware of that, but there are softer ways that we can help. We can actually set out vision. I agree. If it comes, we don't always have control. But I mean, I think what we're saying is it's better that we set out transparently what we'd like to achieve, and that can form the basis of future discussions with potential landowners and others, where we set out our stall. And I think that's a good thing to do.
Okay, let's move on now to PLD 10, which is Notting Hill Gate. Does anybody have any comments in relation to that? Mr. Hean?
It struck me as very subjective to talk about accessibility and an area being attractive when it already exists and functions, and I don't really understand the need for higher buildings in Notting Hill Gate. Big regeneration happening on the gate itself.
I don't think there's any reference to high buildings in the actual vision, is there?
It's happening, so maybe.
No, that's as maybe, oh, sorry, but I have to
It's
look
just the word.
just at the wording, yeah. Thank you. Again, it's quite aspirational in terms of how they can be refurbished or redeveloped to improve the image of the area, but I accept that. That's something I just had to consider whether that approach is our approach. Do you want to say anything on that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. PLV 11, which is South Kensington. You'd introduce yourself.
My name is Susanna Trostow. I represent the Onslow Neighborhood Association, which covers a much wider area than Onslow Square. It goes also well beyond the map which we have here. I think I go step by step on different paragraphs, maybe that's the easiest. In the vision, from the current plan to this plan, there has been a major change in the vision. And I did submit some comments with some comparisons, which are actually quite helpful. So basically what has happened is that now two distinctive identities are the world-class cultural destination. Before it was a quarter, and now it is the district center, and before it was a residential neighborhood of distinction. So there is a material shift, and the local stakeholders, i.e. the residents, haven't been consulted, it hasn't been co-designed with us. Weren't aware of it. I became aware of it when I did the last comment to the consultation, and that's a big concern to us because in terms of the focus and the long-term vision, it doesn't reflect the sizable and important residential nature of South Kensington. In terms of the district center or the map, was another issue here. When it shows basically the shopping sites, the designated town center, only at the bottom there are shops all over, there are like 2 or 3 different floors which are all residential. So even though it has a district center designation, it is highly and densely populated by local residents. Should I just stop here? So for us, it's very important that as it is the case in the local plan, that these 2 very distinctive identities of cultural quarter and residential neighborhood of distinction, which is supported also by the conservation area appraisal, is reintroduced as a vision.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask the council to come back on the issue about the resident.
Yeah, I'll just add, similarly in 9.63, if you read all across it, again, the residential aspect of South Kensington is not really, doesn't really come out. It just says it's surrounded by residential streets, which is really not the right priority and reflection of the current situation, and I don't think it will change in the future either, because it has been like this for the last, 100 years.
I understand, so I'll ask the council to come back on that point in terms of whether the residential aspect of the area is given status it should.
Right, so, just one thing to add, because it goes in unison, the map, which, is similar to the map from last year, the map is, let's say, it's supposed to be, as we heard, illustrative, but if it should really properly illustrate, it should really show the wider area of South Kensington and not just the cultural quarter and the district centre.
I think we've had your representation and so I'm sure the council has read that as well. It's just a question of, can you address whether the map, why the map is so, you haven't got individual maps of the whole of Kensington and Chelsea do, so I think it's because it's centred on the actual issues, but if you can address the residential aspect.
So, in terms of the places and how they've been expressed in this plan, we've divided the places up. I won't go through that, but one of the we specifically mentioned was centres, and clearly South Kensington is identified on that basis, and the South Kensington Place is identified on the basis of the town centre, not the residential hinterland. I think we'd be happy to put forward perhaps a couple of modifications in respect of would consider those, and those are just points of clarification which I think might assist with your concerns regarding this, because as I said, the place is specifically town centre. The nighttime economy classification relates specifically in the London plan to the town centre, so the two amendments that perhaps we could put forward are, the first one is actually in the title PLB 11, where we just refer to South Kensington. So we could say South Kensington Town Centre and Museums, if that provided further clarification on what was meant in this town centre place. And I think the other one is probably paragraph 9.64, where we just...
Because we have comments to 9.64, I think we should take it separately.
Well, I mean, I don't want to spend too long on this because we've already, if the council could put forward what they suggest as being their modifications, I have to consider them and then we'll move on to that.
So the suggested modification for 9.64 is, instead of just saying South Kensington has been identified within the London plan as having nighttime economy of international and national significance, we actually say South Kensington Town Centre has been identified, because that clarifies as a matter of, well, a practical point that the town centre has been designated.
So I think what Mr Wade is saying that he's putting out as a statement of fact that the London plan has identified it as these things, and as previously in terms of when we're talking about Kensington High Street, that the issue of whether it is an area of international or national significance as a nighttime economy isn't really within my remit. It's been decided within the local plan, the London plan.
It isn't.
Sorry?
Unfortunately, it isn't. The London plan has a line for the town centre. And in the 2016 plan, it was NT3, more than local, not international and national. Somehow, that was classified, and one has to ask the question, okay, so where are these things that make it an international centre? Within the town centre, they aren't there. They were thinking, oh, up the road, there's the Albert Hall. Well, the alcohol is 800 metres outside the town centre and in another borough. So the interpretation that has been taken by the London plan was wrong, and the repetition of that here is equally wrong.
Okay, I take your point and I will put that away.
I can give you the reference if you need it.
If you could via the programme officer.
I-
Briefly, please.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
I'll read brief if I can. Our understanding that the London plan was focused on the designation of the South Kensington Museum area. This is, I would like you to check that. The second thing is here in paragraph 9.63, it says South Kensington is the centre of the borough and it is within the capital central activity zone. It is not South Kensington Town Centre, it's not in the activity zone, and I've provided you with the information about it in my appendices. It's outside because the central activity zone ends with Cromwell Road, which is basically where the dotted line goes.
It's on the carnival on the map. It's the orange boundary line.
So the description hasn't been in our.
Ms. Wade, can you come back on?
Just to say that policy designations that we've laid out are not correct, are in line with London plan. So clearly, the London plan at page, there's Annex 1, NT2, Annex 1, South Kensington is in NT1. It's an area of national significance, and that's at page 476 of the London plan. That's a matter of fact. Whether Mr. Bark, I understand, doesn't agree with that, it's not for
Question whether I agree with it. I'm telling you, they missed.
Well, I'm sorry, Ms. Barr, I can't have sort of cross chat and I'll got both your evidence and I can
Yeah,
go away.
check the cars because the map of the cars is not consistent with what RBKC just said in terms of central activities.
I will, obviously I'll come to, actually, whatever conclusion I come to on that, yeah. Thank you,
Sorry, I have more important points to say.
are they one, so,
One is related to nighttime economy.
briefly then, please.
Okay. Now, the nighttime economy is defined by the council from 5 o'clock overnight. It includes the evening time economy, which is already present in South Kensington and supported by local residents. The council answered to, sort of various representations that they will define what they consider to be nighttime economy. We have a defined policy which we have basically the licensing process in place. And we just wonder why the council hasn't been putting that definition into the plan to make it clear that it intends to follow this licensing path.
So, Mr. Wade, is there any point in defining what nighttime and evening economy mean?
Well, it is defined in the policy of the London plan. The definition, which is a London plan definition, says the nighttime economy refers to all economic activity taking place between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. and includes evening uses. And then it mentions what the nighttime economic activities include: eating, drinking, entertainment, shopping, and spectators, as well as hospitality, cleaning, wholesale, distribution, transport, medical services, which employ a large number of nighttime workers. So the definition is there within the development plan. And clearly the London plan is part of the development plan. If you think, Madam Inspector, that it assists if we give that definition, perhaps in the appendix we could do, but then it raises the question about all London plan definitions.
It's not a question about the general definition. The London plan does stipulate that each of the boroughs should define it and reflect in the definition whether there is sufficient public transport for nighttime economy, which there isn't. Sort of the environment, the noise, social behavior aspects of it. And I think it would be worth that it's more clearly defined rather than leaving it to the very generic definition.
Can I leave it at that now, but I do want to ask the council in terms of some of the other policies that we've been looking at, for example, your affordable housing, or there are various policies in the Chelsea plan slightly alter what the London plan says. You've kind of moved on from them. Is there a reason why you can't move on from that in terms of defining what nighttime or evening economy is?
I think in this case, this is a clear definition in the London plan, and it's laid out clearly what it is. I think the point with our own policies, such as affordable housing, is that we take note of what the London plan has said, and then we've actually come up with our own local bespoke version of that, but we've actually flagged up where the London plan policy is. What we haven't done is mix and match the actual different policies, if you see what I mean, Madam Inspector. So we may have taken a criteria from the London plan, which we've made very clear what that criteria is, and we may have part of policy development for housing come up with our own bespoke definition.
Sorry, please, can you not talk? Can you turn your
Oh, I'm sorry.
What we haven't done, I don't think, is necessarily said something is a London plan policy and then used our own interpretation on that, unless we make that very clear. I think it's fair to say that clearly all the other policies in our local plan will apply to this designation. So we do have policies that protect residential amenity from noise and general disturbance. They would all apply. We have a licensing system that clearly other councils all operate with, where we would look at each of these applications on their merits, and that would continue to be the case.
I think I've heard enough about this one, and I'll take away your resident. Sorry, I said I've heard enough.
There's an heritage aspect.
No, but I've said I've heard enough of that. I've read your document. So in terms of heritage, I'm going to be dealing with heritage in a different session.
But it should be introduced in division, just that's my comment. The protection of the heritage.
Now's a good time to break, assuming that we have got to break. So we'll finish, we'll break now and return at 4 p.m. I've been told in terms of the live stream that the live stream will go on for an element, so please be aware of that, that will be live streamed whilst we're going off and getting our coffees, so please be aware of that.
I just wanted to say refreshments outside the council chamber.
The spaceships, which is cutting sound conducting devices, cameras. I think it's behind us because I saw my
Yeah, I don't know.
Can I ask you about?
I have to keep saying that I'm the.
Yes. So how do you mean you're representing?
Yeah.
Is there anybody that can represent you? No, I don't think she will. She doesn't want to have.
Is there anybody that's come in tomorrow to represent?
What time exactly will it be?
No.
Precise time, because the thing is, I had to be here at 11 in the morning because of the wind.
Yeah.
The rain was coming, my
Yes.
colleague is one, so I think I'm doing quite-
Hello.
So I can see the rest of the person. But in here, I know it's in the morning.
We're dealing with SA1 and SA2 in the morning, which is Kensal Rise and Girls School.
Sometimes.
That means in the afternoon, Mornington will be in the afternoon.
It would be, yes, and it's in that order of,
It's not like, is it first or something?
let me just check what the number is. If I might, agenda for tomorrow, agenda day 3, right, so, yeah, so we've got so these two in the morning, and then from 2 o'clock, we're dealing with these, so Warnington is second on, so I think
About 2:30.
half 2.
Well, my thing starts at 3, I doubt I'll make it, but.
Where's that?
I might actually speak, are you coming tomorrow? Sorry,
Yeah, I am.
oh, okay, I might ask him to do
Yeah.
mine. Would you be willing to do a representation for
Sure.
Young Warnington?
Yeah.
So we can have a talk about that later.
Okay.
Cool, thank you, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Also, is there a name tag for me, because
Well, I mean,
I'm.
I know it's not, you don't normally have 2, because it just makes it confusing, but I can give you your.
Yeah. Just sort of, I don't know.
this afternoon's session relating to matter 3 and spatial strategy. Can we now move on to the KLB 12, which is Kings Road East? Does anyone have any comments they'd like to raise relating to this particular vision? Council, raise any further comments? PRV 13, which is Kings Road West. Again, does anyone have any comments they'd like to bring into relation to that Greg's vision? Okay, let's now move on to PRV 14. It's Earl's Court. Can we double check that Earl's Court is got the same title we gave Kensal Canal side is an opportunity area. Well, Earl's Court is just Earl's Court. Does it deserve a? Oh, it's Earl's Court Road. Oh yeah, sorry. Clearly you didn't have a copy. Okay. Does anyone have any issue related to that one? No. Brompton Cross. I mean, clearly, some of these things in quotation marks are quite interesting, like international appeal, sort of, I do like that. And earlier on, the other one which talked about special shops, or it's nice and vague, but if the council considers it.
I think we're satisfied that that is it. I think we're satisfied that that, without going into lots of detail about what we mean by that, I think we've just tried to use that as a summing up of what we think that it will be specialist. I think that probably the words that are probably more useful are perhaps specialist boutique retail centre. It's just a description saying it's got to be international appeal. So I think it's more to do with the fact that we see that's a wide range of, which it is at the moment, a wide range of sort of selective boutique type shops.
Coming back on the London plan though, and the comment that was made by the Onslow Neighbourhood Association, it's not an international centre or anything, is it? So could that not lead to confusion?
I think what we're saying is that it's a small centre, clearly, that is served by sort of bespoke boutique retail shops. I don't necessarily, with an international appeal, I don't think that necessarily lends itself to immediately saying that it's within the definition of a centre of international importance.
Okay, I think I might reflect on that one.
I mean, if we want to take out with international appeal, I don't think we would object to that if we feel that that would make it slightly better. Right.
I suppose where I'm coming from is if I allow you to move forward with these big aspirational visions, what you want to aspire to has to be coherent, and I'm not 100% sure that saying something's got international appeal and quotation marks really is necessarily that clear in terms of what you're actually. I mean, there's an international market, lots of things you don't necessarily want to be into those.
Yes, I take your point, Madam Inspector, so if you feel that it would be appropriate to delete that particular sentence, then we would we fix.
Westbourne Road. That. Knightsbridge. I suppose with Knightsbridge, coming back to the comments made by Mr. Barkin, it does reference actually the residential element in this vision, yet the residential element hasn't been referenced in the other visions. And I just wondered whether there was an inconsistency or whether it was a specific.
I think that just really provides the answer that I think one of the issues that the council has experienced, particularly in Harrods, is the road around Harrods and the fact that it's actually being used for all sorts of noise polluting activities. And I think that has been an issue. The council.
So is that a euphemism?
No, well, it's racing. It's international sports cars. Like tablets are driven around Harrods, and that's actually caused quite a lot of problems with residential amenity. And I think council has been trying to ensure that that the two functions are residential water and international and national shopping destination, because of those issues are clearly recognised. I don't think, with respect to the same scenario, we see the same scenario in quite the same way as South Kensington. I mean, again, I'll come back to the point, if you think that it would be appropriate to include that within the vision of South Kensington, which is, then I don't think we would have any objection. We're doing safe systems. So.
I would suggest in the same consistency that it would be a sensible approach. Percent sure how you deal with harmonious. That's quite a big ask.
We had a conversation with Mr. Bay, also Mr. Bay, also Johnson. I can come up with a proposal and forward it to council and decide to adopt it or not. And for the residential definition as well.
Was this a conversation you had outside the hearing session?
It was an informal one. I just said it was through you, Madam Inspector, you would have to decide whether that was appropriate. I said from the council's point of view, we were happy to look at anything that was suggested, but it would be your decision.
I'm happy for you to bring it forward and then for me to decide as to whether I want to go forward. As I said right at the beginning of my opening, whilst I asked for some of these pieces of work to be undertaken, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll necessarily move forward with them, but unless I have them, I can't suggestion.
Just wanted to add that clearly the nighttime economy is defined in the London plan, but the visions actually use the term evening economy. It's about defining what we mean as terms of the evening economy is as distinct from the nighttime economy. We won't change the definition.
Okay, thank you. I don't really want to move on. If this is going to be something going on outside of the hearing session, I'll leave it to you to have that.
So I'm just going to suggest that we glossary.
Yeah, yes, I mean, that's what I'm sure that both of you are able to come to some helpful. Fulham Road West. I don't know if we need to comment on that. Does anyone want to know? Right, then we have the last vision, which is keeping life local, walkable neighbourhood. You have a vision and then you have a note in the vision talking about the policy method. So I think that we need to consider in terms of whether it should be a policy or whether it's really a strategy for yourselves. Okay. Having gone through those both visions, and bearing in mind, obviously I have to come to the fundamental issue whether they're actually policies or visions. I'd now like to move on to the actual council strategy. We can go right back to the beginning, which is my question 27 and 28. Most plans that I've looked at would have an actual explicit strategy, which would set out how the growth or where growth should be distributed within the borough or council administrative area. This plan doesn't actually have a strategy per se. The council has suggested in its statement that our strategy to deliver the vision should be rebranded as our spatial strategy. And the way it's worded, it's not necessarily particularly clear any hierarchy of where the development should go. I'd be interested in the council's response to that. It's your paragraph 1.26.
Yes, yeah, so I think our, the places chapter and the key diagram in particular is what we consider as where we set out where growth will take place. And the whole kind of structure of the places section is set out so that we have the two opportunity area sites. That's where we start from, which is where most of the growth in the borough will take place. Mm-hmm. And then we move on to areas where we see some positive change, incremental, not as large as the the opportunity areas. So those are then areas with potential for some change. And so we've got the map to West Estate Nottingham, which is only in relation to the environmental improvements, the network, the West Wing, and then we've got the three employment zones. So that forms the next round in the hierarchy of growth, and then we've got the larger town centres. So again, because they're very established town centres, we don't see them as significantly completely being changed. But as we've discussed through the vision, we've got visions for each of our town centres, and then we drill down to our very local centres and neighbourhoods and talk about the walkable neighbourhoods. So I think initially at regulation 18, our plan was structured so that we had the strategy, the key diagram, and then the places chapter appeared after. But following consultation, it was felt that actually those sections are better moved towards the end of the plan. So I think you could see the sort of disconnect that may have happened there from the strategy to deliver the vision and where the places ended up at the back of the plan. But that is the rationale that we've set out in those four distinct areas, how growth should take place in the borough, and they are labelled with different colours and chronological order, starting from opportunity areas when you're
To make the plan more coherent, albeit I should be improving it, but perhaps make it effective, I would suggest that you may more explicit your spatial strategy and not wanting to take you back to where you were prior to the regulating consultation. But there's a much more of a logic to have your visions right at the beginning, because otherwise that gives a context to your policies. I'd be interested to know why, what reason people felt that the vision should be at the back.
I suspect it was because the development management, the main bulk of the policies were I suspect that's where many people who use the plan find it convenient to have them at the beginning of the plan, whether that's appropriate or not. As panels, we might want to see it a different way, but I think the feedback we got was that actually it'd be more appropriate to have the policies at the beginning. I can obviously see the argument why you should have a vision before we develop the policy, and that was, as I said, our original intention. I think this was in response to a number of, with some suggestions that actually the plan, perhaps read by a layperson, wouldn't be quite so user friendly. I'm really giving the answer. It may not be the answer that you wanted, but it's the honest answer.
Okay, it seems to be totally illogical to be honest, put the vision at the back. So in terms of effectiveness, I would suggest that you, if the vision is forward, if they have the main visions, and if you could firm up spatial strategy to make it clearer in terms of you express the different colours, that there was some coherence to that, which I have to say I completely miss, so that would be helpful. I do notice that you keep talking about the proposals map. It is a policies map, and it's been for quite a while since the regs changed, but it's a minor issue, isn't it? Does everybody else understand why I've suggested that? Okay. Can we now look at the issue about strategic policies? So I'm now moving to question 30. The council set out what it considers to be relevant strategic policies to address the council's priorities, setting out an overall strategy for development. You've referenced the framework, which does actually suggest that you keep the number of strategic policies to a minimum. I'd be interested to know why, for example, housing size and standards of strategic policy.
we've outlined the policies which we consider are strategic, which will help deliver the overall vision of the plan. We've listed them as such. So housing size and standards, for example, it is something in terms of the housing size. We've undertaken a strategic assessment across the borough. The local housing needs assessment identified the housing size of homes that we need. And then in terms of the housing standards, as you know, that we've got to adopt the nationally prescribed space standards for them to apply to us locally. That's the kind of logic that we've taken. We've also described here that we perhaps that moves on to the next question. But it's the overarching objectives and how we can help deliver the planning vision, where we feel there are strategic in some policies. I think we can make a distinction. There can be a distinction where some parts of the policy are strategic, whereas others are not.
It might be helpful looking at paragraph 21 of the framework. It says strategic policy should look ahead over a minimum of 15 years. Maybe that's what the plan does. I'm actually looking at, paragraph 21. Sorry, I was reading the wrong one. These strategic policies should be limited to those necessary to address the strategic priorities of the area and any relevant cross-boundary issues to provide a clear starting point for any non-strategic policies that are needed. Strategic policy should not extend to detailed matters that are more appropriately dealt with through neighbourhood plans or other non-strategic policies. So I'm just concerned that, many of these policies could be considered to be non-strategic. I might ask you to just go through them again, bearing in mind the advice in paragraph 21.
The only point I wanted to make, Madam Inspector, we are, as the smallest council in London geographically, our housing delivery is generally based on 2 very large sites and then a number of quite small sites. So I would say that perhaps small sites in our borough we would regard as more strategic importance than perhaps others, because the cumulative number of small sites actually is very important to bring forward things to be on target. So that's the only point I would make. I would take your point on the other points you've
Thank you, Madam Inspector. In terms of with the same question on a similar strand, I was going to ask why GB16I is classified as not strategic.
That question I actually asked, so it might be one that I'm going to ask again. So
Thank you.
just bear with me on that one.
Sorry.
So moving forward, on what basis? So GB13 is a similar example. On what basis have you decided that individual that some parts of individual are strategic and others are not? So you've got half and half policies, which I have to admit I've never ever come across before. And I just want to get a more understanding of your approach.
Yes, I think I have looked at GB13 just before the hearing session again, 13 and 14, and in fact I agree that we should kind of work between class them as distinct from each other. It might be they're both strategic because the policy GB14 on waterways, which is the River Thames and the canal, TransUnion Canal, they are actually strategic together. So I would reclass them as. So I think it's a case of us, as you've suggested, going back and then having another look at these policies and forming.
It may be that an element of a policy a criteria may not, on criteria on its own, may not be strategic, but if it falls within the remit of a strategic policy, then have it all as strategic. And conversely, if it's non-strategic, keep it as non-strategic. Keep it as simple as possible, basically. Ms. Barker, can you put your phone round up if you want to speak?
Sorry.
If you came to the conclusion that something was non-strategic, where would it go to?
It would just remain in the plan, it just
Oh,
would
I
be in a table and it wouldn't be defined as strategic. The major issue relating, which I think Mr. Peterson is about, perhaps Mr. Peterson, you can say your piece.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, where this does have some real impact is for those either preparing or updating and reviewing a neighbourhood plan, because the general conformity requirement is different for strategic and non-strategic policies. And we would share your view that the vast majority of policies in this plan have been defined as strategic. It has been a habit, I have to say, of London LPAs to do that. Some even go so far as to say all our policies are strategic because they simply don't want to bother to do the distinction and have a list like Appendix 3. So it is a serious issue across London, and as a co-convener of Neighbourhood Planners London, it's something we've been flagging up with boroughs, not just this one. So as far as Kensington and Chelsea are concerned, they have gone to the trouble of doing a list, but it is a list where we would argue that it is unnecessarily weighted towards strategic, and that when you get to small site allocations, for example, it is quite hard to see how that can be justified in terms of the language of paragraph 21 of the NPPF, which you've just read out. How can a site, but it's not just sites within our own neighbourhood area, but other people who may be doing neighbourhood plans in the next 5 years, then find, oh, we can't do anything on that site by way of variation because it's deemed strategic. So we think it's been unnecessarily restrictive and it does need another look, and that there's quite a number of policies which should be recategorised as non-strategic, because that's the definitions in the NPPF and the NPPG.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. So the council has said that they're going to go through and refresh that appendix. Just to clarify for everyone who's here, these modifications that the council are making, were I to recommend that they be made modifications, they would be the subject for consultation. So it's not this isn't necessarily the end of the process. There would be, in the interest of fairness, there would be further public consultation that would be undertaken. It's unlikely that it would come to hearings again, however, there would be further public consultation. My last question, sorry, Mr. McLeod?
Last question.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't anticipate, you anticipated question 32. If you're going to the last question.
I was indeed,
Yeah.
yes. Are any main modifications necessary to ensure the soundness of the plan, and if so, why? The council's put forward a number of issues relating to strategic and not strategic, but that's sort of been taken by this afternoon's session. A number of the council also at the end of this session, someone's been taking notes of where we're hoping someone will be taking notes of various action points that have gone forward, so that we'll just recap that all those haven't been missed. I can see that there are 4 co-writings up. I'll start with this.
Isis Amlak, resident. I want to really just speak to the term good growth in the vision, are we there?
We've been there, gone there.
Well, we kind of didn't get a chance to really mention it.
Perhaps you won't,
But in this last section now, we've gone through the questions, but we haven't actually spoken about.
we talked about the main vision.
Right, okay. I must have missed
Sorry,
that.
that's missed that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Madam Inspector, I should recommend for the council to revise all of its place visions from PLB 1 and PLB 2, as at the moment the council has not demonstrated any consideration paid during the formulation of those place visions. And it's quite.
So what do you mean? We've already previously gone through PLV one and PLV two. We just talked about.
Oh, right, so is this question limited to matter 2 only, and not matter 1?
No, we've just we've gone through it, and a number of main modifications have been, we discussed these issues, and we did talk about a few main modifications. If there are anything additional that's come forward, I briefly want to do it, but I don't really want to reiterate what we've already discussed, because we've already gone through PLV one, PLV two, and various changes I have suggested to the council that they take forward, and people have had the opportunity really to
I'm talking about all the other place visions apart from PLV 1, PLV 2.
we just been through all the PLV one. We've gone through more, haven't
Yes, I'm referring specifically to the lack of any evidence that.
we? Yeah, you did say that earlier. Yeah, I registered that you said that earlier that you were concerned that the PFR forms, yes, indeed, but I think that's possibly because they weren't policies, but that's something that for me to consider. Thank you. Ms. McCann.
Like Madam Speaker, to add a main modification with reference to does the plan include all relevant strategic policies, I would suggest to be effective and to be able to deliver on the Council's aims of green, inclusive, and livable, that a strategic policy be added to the suite of policies that relates to those 3 objectives, and that be to do with local food production and urban agriculture. I believe I've expounded at length on the justification for that. I won't go into that again, but I have the evidence to support.
Okay, I'll consider.
Thank you.
Mine in support of that is like to ask that my main modification be considered with an emphasis on livability across the board for the vision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Is that Mike?
Sorry, I'm Suzanne Mack, resident. Just to pick up on that point about inclusivity, it doesn't, the vision doesn't sufficiently demonstrate any commitments to principles of participation, co-production, etc., co-design. So is it possible that there's a modification that talks about that sometimes, inclusivity?
In terms of the vision, so we've already discussed the vision right at the beginning, but there was a discussion about it being inclusive, and that was actually referenced, I believe. That point has been raised. All right, Mr. Neal, you've got your program up. Thank you. Sorry, just let me know if some people have okay, so it's 4:30, and if someone from the council could go through what they consider the action points, so we can do some cross-referencing.
I think on the action points, pardon me, for chapter 9 in general, we'll be looking at the wording for the place maps and to explain whether they're indicative or illustrative or whatever it might be. PLB 1, consider reading the reference to SPD. Westway Para 9.24, clarify with you, ISIS, the who owns the land to the Westway. PLB 3, make reference to co-design, make it clear that we're co-designing with the community. PLB 5, clarifying the vision and the objectives of the workplace strategy. PLB 9, Portobello, change the word West Indian, remove the word West Indian, it's not necessary. PLB 11, South Ken, I think we'll be considering further mods concerning the title of the place. And paragraph 9.64, whether we're referencing South Kensington or South Kensington town centre is supporting the maritime economy justification. Consider adding references to the residential community, South Kensington vision. And I think talk to the Onslow Square as Association to their definition of the evening. Name, apologies. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, can I just cross-reference them with the, action points? Oh, you not done it? Oh, right.
And then the other one was considering how we make the special strategy more explicit. And also as part of that, considering whether it would be appropriate to reorder the plan to make it more explicit.
Okay. I'll just quickly go through the slide.
One more, right, scroll down the bottom of the page. Talking about the refreshing appendix 3 in terms of the street on street policy.
Okay, thank you. Right, the ones that I'm going to just pick up on, when we're looking at, Kensal Canal side, have we put in the business about the provision of community facilities? That was a reference, wasn't it, that, the vision should reference community facilities, we're taking thereof. How do you miss that one?
Yes.
Okay. Got the maps. PLV 3A is about co-designing with the community. Have that been referenced, that one?
Yep.
Okay, lovely. Then there's the Westway vision. There's about the workspace strategy, the element, do you remember that?
Yep, got that one.
Yep, okay. PLV8, residential immunity. 9.59, you've picked up, haven't you?
Yep.
Got the town centre museums relating to PLV 11, was it? And then we've got the action point relating to international appeal. And then you've got the element relating to strategic policies. So that's great. Thank you very much, everybody. I'd like to form. Sorry.
One just point, just to be clear, meeting West Indian and it's African Caribbean, not Afro-Caribbean.
Yeah, yes, you've got that, yes, of course. Right, okay, well, I'd like to close today's session of examination of the local plan. I may be seeing some of you tomorrow. If so, we'll look forward to seeing you at 10 AM. If not, thank you very much for your participation. And tonight is closed.
So she sums up. So